For your little curtains, you're going to need to choose your fabric. This is actually just a piece of an old sheet. Worked great. Whatever color you want your curtain rod to be. Then for the ends here, I found these perfectly circular beads on Temu, and it's actually for putting on your fingernails and decorating your fingernails, and I use those, but a couple of small beads would work fine. You're going to need 2 round toothpicks, unless for some reason you wanted a square curtain rod. Clips of some kind. You've got your tape, sanding. You might want some embroidery thread, and I'll show you it because you might want ties on here. I don't have ties on here, but you might, and embroidery thread works really well for that. Now, this is important. You need either Tacky glue or Elmer's glue because we're dipping this into a solution, and it needs to be one of those two things. I then use some wood glue because you're going to have to cut these toothpicks and then glue them in the middle. And the wood glue, although it takes longer to dry, is stronger. So I chose that. And then a container and some water. It's going to be for your glue solution. So the first thing that you're going to do is you'll take your fabric. You're going to cut 2 panels. Okay. And these are 5.7 by 10. So what this gives you is enough fabric for for a pretty long curtain. Okay, I have this sort of sketched out. This is not in the best shape, but the window that I base this on, the wall goes on from here. But this was a window that it could be good for living room. And actually this was similar to one in one of our bedrooms. So at any rate, what I did is I made these so that you have, see, a little extra. Because when we do this, you may need to trim this, you may need to adjust this, which can be done after it's dried. That's no big deal. So, this was, I think, a little, no, this is about the same thing. Okay. So you'll cut 2 of those, 5.7 by 10. All right. Then what you do, and I've already made some to show you, is you're going to take your Tacky glue or your Elmer's glue, and you're going to put in enough water that you get sort of this, it looks like milk. Okay. So you'll make that and just keep adjusting. You can always add more water or whatnot. Okay, and then you're just going to dip these in here. And just make sure they are good and soaked. Pardon me, I'm going to grab something here. Okay, good and soaked through. Okay. If you needed to iron the fabric, it's a good idea to do that ahead of time because, as you see, I can get that out of there. Okay, so you take them out, put them on a piece of towel. You don't really want to dry it too much. I just put it on here so that it's not sopping wet. Okay, so you can put that aside, and we're going to work with this. So one thing that you might notice is that my edges have a little bit of rawness to them. And that's because I pulled on the threads so that I could get a nice clean cut. I pulled on them, and then that way I could trim. And I left it a little bit raw because I can also trim this off a lot easier after it dries. See, there's some here that's easier to show you. And if there's little bits of lint or something, that doesn't matter. See, this way I can cut that really straight. And so these, we want to go ahead and form. So I'm going to put this one out of the way. And you're just going to kind of accordion this and tuck under for the first tuck. Okay? Now, don't worry about doing it all the way down. You can try doing that, but it won't stay very well. Okay? And we're going to worry about that in a minute. So you could maybe start it this way if it'll stay. Okay, and I'm just accordioning this. I'm folding back and forth. I don't know how to say that word. I'm a goofball. And I'm just folding back and forth. I'm gonna try to keep it about the same. See? And I'm just gonna go across till I get to the end and then make sure that end also tucks under. Just because, I mean, I can clean up these edges, but it'll look a lot cleaner if the ends are tucked under like that. Okay, so I have that. So holding that, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get these to kind of go down. And the way that I'm gonna do this is I'm just sort of pulling on this, pulling out what I have up above. Just sort of pulling that down, I mean, like that. And I keep doing that. All right. And it doesn't have to be exactly in alignment with the top, because I can do this. Oh, I'm having, you know, I put it on the tape so these wouldn't roll around, but then my tape is stuck to my hand. Yeah, can't win. So I'll just keep doing that until I'm happy with it. And I'll probably adjust this a little bit more off camera. But until I'm pretty happy with it, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as up above, because the curtains wouldn't be, unless you want really tailored curtains. In which case, if you want them to be really straight, then you're going to need to do it exactly the same. And that'll take a little bit more time. But you have plenty of time. One thing about this project is that you need some patience, because you're going to have to just wait until things dry. And I know we don't like to do that. We like to wait till it's partially dry and move on. Well, if you're anything like me. So at any rate, I'll adjust that. So at this point, kind of make sure this is even across the top. It can be adjusted, don't panic. And I'm going to go ahead and take one of my clips, and I'm just going to clamp this down. And I want to clamp it down approximately however much I want to be above the pole. Once again, this can be adjusted. There's no science to that. It's your decision. Now, for the bottom, I don't need to clip that. In fact, I don't want to, because I want this to look more natural. Because it wouldn't hang just perfectly straight down here and then crimp and everything. So I don't clip it in the middle, because that's going to indent it. It'll leave an indentation. And then down here it will as well. So what I did is I just took a little bit of tape, and I don't know that it matters. You could use masking tape, I imagine. And I just sort of very lightly put the tape around here. Just loosely, I mean. And that way it holds that while it dries. Now, my dears, this takes a while to dry. So it just, you have to be patient. You're going to probably want to work on 2 projects at the same time. It just is going to take some time. So we're going to put that aside. And then what you can be doing, of course, you can do it for your second one. Then let's go ahead and make the pole while we're waiting here. This tape is going to be more of a hassle. So you would go ahead and do your other one. And the deal with the toothpicks is, unless you have a single hung window, which you might, in which case it's going to be a little bit easier. You're not going to have to cut toothpicks and extend them. But my messed up picture here, you'll see that I did this toothpick 9.5 in length, okay? Because that's how it would look nice on this size window. But if you have a single hung window, then you can get away with probably just using 1 toothpick, all right? But what we're going to try to do is get to 9.5 to have it look as wide as this. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is, and I'm forgetting a step, I really want to sand these well, and probably in between my paint layers, I really want to sand well, because if you're trying to make this look like it's metal, because that's what a lot of them are, then you need a nice smooth coat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I think this one maybe I already did. I want to cut it just above where it tapers. Then I can keep that little niblet that's on the end. And it's okay. These tend to cut it at an angle. I mean, I don't really think it's supposed to do that, but it doesn't cut well. Don't worry about that. Because see, we're going to do the same thing here. And when I go to do this, it'll glue just fine. It'll glue straight. All right, so I didn't measure that, so I may need to clip off some more for 9.5. Let's see here. Okay. Oh yeah, I need a little bit more that I'm clipping off. I can leave these points. That's not a problem at all. And let's see here, get it approximately right. So clip these off. All right, that's at an angle. I should be a little closer. Oh, a little short. Okay, but I can still show you. So, all right, so I have these. They're not that even, I know. I have some wood glue, however. And I'm just going to use enough wood glue that I can hold this together pretty well. Now, this excess, if you can tell, there's some, leaking out. That's okay, because the nice thing about wood glue is it can be sanded well and it'll still hold fairly well. But we're not finished here because, all right, so we have that. What's going to happen when that dries, and it does take a while. Now, I know the instructions on wood glue say that you need to wait a whole day. Well, I don't know about that. This will take a little longer to dry than the curtains themselves, than these. But the thing is, you're going to want to kind of adjust this, and there's a certain amount of waiting, but it doesn't have to be 24 hours. Okay. Now, when that dries, okay, I just took a little niblet off the end, just like the little tiny point. You could use various things to do this. I just used what I had. So when this is dry, this is not dry, but when it's dry, I'm going to take this little niblet and I'm just going to glue it on what will be the back. What that does is obviously it gives me, it's going to be a little bit more sturdy. It'll hold it in place. Now, don't worry about the fact that that sticks out, see? Because when you go to mount this, depending on what you want on the sides, you're going to want to have something supporting it, just like on a real curtain rod, right? There's usually a little support here in the middle when it's really long. And so it's going to help you to actually glue that to the wall. So you don't have to use this. Like I said, it could be something else. Maybe it's a smaller bead. It doesn't matter, but it's going to strengthen that and help it to be easier for you to hang. Okay, so at this point, you could go ahead while you're waiting. You could go ahead and put the ends on if you want, but I would suggest maybe waiting on that, just because what if that falls off while you're trying to work with this? Ultimately what will happen is we're going to adjust this when it gets almost dry. All right, so that needs to be nice and dry. This, when it's almost completely dry, I will come back and I'll show you how this can be manipulated. It can still be, folded. It can still be adjusted a little bit. Okay, so you're just going to need to be patient and wait for things to dry. These are almost dry. They're not quite dry, but they're almost dry. And at this point, you can remove the tape. And we're going to still hold this together with our fingers, and we're going to look and see Are we happy with the way that this is? Does it look like what we want? And if it is, then that's great. I can leave this to dry completely. But while I'm letting this dry completely, if I like that, I can tape it again if I want to. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take my clip and I'm going to go the opposite direction here. And that's just so that it's a little easier for me to glue this on. So you can go the opposite direction. If you decide you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But it allows you to flare this out a little bit, and you can just make this however you wish. If it does not look the way you want, it's still moldable, and you don't have too much longer to wait. So in the meantime, this was pretty dry, so I wanted to sand it real well so that when I go to paint this, I can go ahead and ooh, that's way more than I needed. I want to sand it, and then when I do this, hopefully the paint, see, will sort of fill that seam. And so I'm going to want to I'll put on a coat, and then I'll sand, and then I'll put on another coat. Another thing that helps me is I can just run my fingers across, and that'll help smooth that grain down. You know, this is just not a good quality wood. And so we have to do what we can to sort of keep that down, because if you're, well, and by the way, you don't have to use silver. You can make this black, whatever color you want. But I want this to look somewhat metallic. So I'm going to need to do, you know, for this one, I did quite a bit of sanding, and then I could even go in here and do a little bit more to get that to look even more metallic. So when these are good to go, when these are dry, okay, these are not quite dry, and I adjust everything the way that I want. Of course, my last couple steps would be to just glue this on here, and you can use your tacky glue for that. Just use a generous amount of tacky glue. And you're going to glue that on. Now, before this is completely dry, if you want to put a tie on this, then I suggest embroidery thread, and just maybe taking 2 of the threads, and you can go ahead and decide where you wanted these to be. Now, I have a video that shows you how to make tassels, bigger tassels, out of embroidery thread. But before it's completely dry is when I would suggest doing this, because then you can adjust it and you can make this flare out. So see, I can make this wider, right, than what I did here. I can make the top wider, and then that gives me more of that look of a tie back, that's really being tied back. So that side you'd want as straight as possible, like this, and then the top. And really that's easy. You're just going to glue that down when it's dry, and then glue your ends on, whatever little end. I put the little clear ones. You could paint those the same color, you know, that's totally your choice. So when that's all glued on, I mean, that's it. You can do a little trimming if you have some rough edges. Once this is dry, that's not a problem at all. You may not be able to pull at any threads, but you can make some trims and stuff like that. And so these are how mine turned out, of course, and you can tell, see, they're really crisp now. You can do some manipulating, as you can tell that I can do here, and I can do a little trimming. But basically that's that. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe.